Alright, let's look into the different types of plants. As you can see from the diagram, we have two different types of plants. The one we call it a single-use plant, the next one is the standing plants. Now, single-use plants are used for non-repetitive activities such as programs, projects, and budgets. Standing plants typically for repetitive activities, and these are applied to set mission, objectives, strategies, policies, and procedures. The plants are classified into standing plants and single-use plants, as we have already discussed. Standing plants provide guidelines for further course of action and are used over a period of time. Standing plants are designed for situations that recur often enough to justify a standardized approach. For example, a bank designs a standing plan to process a loan application. Using this standing plan, the bank manager decides whether to approve or not, whether to approve or not a loan application depending upon the details furnished by the applicant. Once the formulated these plans are in operation for a long period of time unless there is a change in these plans. Examples of such plans are organizational mission, long-term objectives, strategies, policies, procedures, and rules. On the other hand, single-use plans are designed for specific end. When an end is reached, the plan is dissolved or formulated again for the next end. Example of such plans are projects, budgets, quotas, targets, etc. Single-use plans are generally derived from standard plans. Organizations set their mission and objectives, out of which strategic actions are determined in order to put these actions into operations. Projects, budgets, etc. are prepared for specific time periods. Now, let us look at the hierarchies of plans. The first one, we start with the mission or the purpose of the organization. Then there are some long-term objectives. Based on those objectives, we have strategies. Then, in order to guide the employees, we have policies. There are procedures and rules. Then individual departments are bestowed with programs and projects. Departments prepare their own budgets, and also every department have codes and targets. Now at last, let us look into the steps that goes into planning. As you can see, the first step is to establish goals and objectives. Then establishing planning premises, deciding the planning period, identification of alternatives, evaluation and selection of alternatives, developing, derivating or supportive plans, measuring and controlling the process. Now let us look at each of these points in detail. The first one is establishing goals or objectives. The first step in planning process is to determine the enterprise objectives. These are set by upper layer manager after a number of objectives have been carefully considered. The objective set depends on the number of factors like the mission of the organization, abilities of the organization, etc. Once the organization's objectives are determined, the section-wise or department-wise objectives are planned at the lower level. Defining the objectives of every department is a very essential one. That is, then only a clear-cut direction is available to the departments. Control process is very easy if the objectives are clearly defined. The next point is establishing planning premises. Now, this is the second step in planning, which involves establishing planning premises, that is, the conditions under which planning activities will be undertaken. Planning premises are planning assumptions, the expected environmental factors, pertinent facts, and information related to the future, such as general economic conditions, population trends, competitive behavior, etc. The planning premises can be classified as below. That is, internal and external premises. It can be tangible and intangible premises, or it could be controllable and non-controllable premises. What is internal and external premises? Premises that may exist within or outside the enterprise. Internal premises include sales forecasts, ability of the organization in the form of machines, methods of designs, behavior of the owners and employees, etc. The external premises exist outside the enterprise and include general business and economic environment, technological changes, government policies and regulation, population growth, etc. Now, what is tangible and intangible premises? Tangible premises are those which can be quantified. They include population growth, industrial demand, capital and resources invested, etc. On the other hand, political stability, sociological factors, attitudes, and behavior of the owners, etc., are intangible premises. Controllable and non-controllable premises. Some of the planning premises are controllable and others are non-controllable. Some examples of non-controllable factors are strikes, wars, natural calamities, legislations, etc. Because of the presence of non-controllable factors, that is, organization has to revise plans periodically in accordance with the current development. The controllable factors are the availability of resources, skills of managers, labor, etc. The third point is deciding the planning period. Once the long-term objectives and planning premises are decided, the next task is to decide the period of the plan. Some plans are made for an year, and in others it will be decades. Companies generally base their period on a future that can reasonably be anticipated. The factors which influence the choice of a period are lead time in development and commercialization of a new product. An aircraft building company planning to start a new project should have a planning period of 5 to 10 years, whereas a small manufacturer of space parts who can commercialize his idea in a year or so makes an annual plans. Time period required for recovering capital investment. Alright, the time period for recovering capital investment or the payback period. The payback period also influences planning period. For example, if a machine costs 50 lakhs and generates a cash inflow of rupees 10 lakhs a year, it has a payback period of 5 years. Therefore, a plant should also be for at least 5 years. The third one is length of commitment already made. The plan period should be long enough to enable the fulfillment of already made commitments. For example, if a company has agreed to supply goods for 5 years, it needs to plan for the same period to fulfill its commitments. Right, the fourth point is identification of alternatives. The fourth step in planning is identifying alternatives. A particular objective can be achieved through various actions. For example, an organization's objective is to grow further, which can be achieved in several ways, like expanding in the same field of business or product line, diversifying in other areas, joining hands with other organizations, and so on. With each category, there may be several alternatives. For example, diversification may point out the possibility of entering into one of the several fields. The next one, the next point is evaluation and selection of alternatives. Once the alternatives are identified, the next step is to evaluate the alternatives in the light of the premises and the goals, and to select the best course of action or courses of action. This is done with the help of quantitative techniques and operation research. In addition to software packages are available for evaluating the alternatives. Next point is developing derivative and supportive plans. Once the plan is selected, various plans are derived so as to support the main plan. The derivative may be planning for buying equipment, buying raw materials, etc. These derivative plans are formulated out of the main plan and therefore they support measuring and controlling the process. One should not allow plan to run on its own without monitoring its progress. Managers need to check the progress of their plans so that remedial action can be taken to make the plan work or change the plan if it is unrealistic. Hence, process for controlling is a part of any process.